Welcome to episode 89 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Lost Guy. It's January 28, 1900. It's 10:40 in the morning, and in Leipzig, in a restaurant called the Mariengarten, a room full of men in stiff collars and heavy winter coats does something that sounds bureaucratic, but turns out to be destiny. They found the Deutscher Fußballbund, the DFB, and with that, German football stops being a scattered hobby of pioneers and becomes an institution, a system, a national machine that will eventually win World Cups, produce dynasties, and export a very German idea of football to the world: organization, depth, and competitive edge. But before the machine, there was chaos, long trousers, handmade goalposts, sometimes not even a crossbar, just a rope stretched across, rules written by the players themselves, and opponents found the way you found everything in the 1880s, by placing a challenge in a newspaper. That was the mood in Germany's early football years: improvised, mocked, and constantly at war with the country's old sporting culture, especially the gymnastics establishment, which sneered at football as an English after-sport, a foreign pastime for undisciplined boys. So today, we go back to the beginning, the two pioneers who light the fuse, the early clubs, the unofficial internationals, the humiliations that teach the lesson, the meeting in Leipzig, the sprint from founding to championship to FIFA to national team, and then the long arc: wars, bans, splits, reunification, Bundesliga, dominance, and the question that matters now: where does Germany sit today? Still a heavyweight, but no longer the sure thing? We start with the two pioneers. The first is a school teacher, Konrad Koch. In the 1870s, in Braunschweig, he introduces the game to pupils and translates the laws of the game into German. It sounds small, but it's not. You don't spread a sport without language. You don't build a culture without vocabulary. The second is a cosmopolitan organizer, Walter Bensemann. He is the connector, the scheduler, the networker, the man who believes football is international by nature, and then proves it. In the late 1890s, Bensemann helps arrange selection teams and international comparisons, and these early German teams are raw and brave and often outmatched. One of the most famous is in Paris, France versus Germany, 0-7, an unofficial international. And then come the English lessons. Germany plays England in these unofficial matches and gets dismantled, sometimes brutally, like losing 13-2 on one day and then 10-2 the next, because England are not just playing football, they're exporting a finished product. Those early hammerings matter because they create a uniquely German response. If we're behind, we don't whine, we organize. And by the turn of the century, organization becomes the whole point. Germany has clubs, yes, but they are fragmented across regions, and the sport is still fighting for legitimacy. So the demand grows for three things: uniform rules, a national championship, and a proper national team framework. Which brings us to Leipzig, on this day, January 28, the year 1900, Mariengarten, a congress of football people, representatives of dozens of clubs and regional associations, in total 86 clubs represented. A local Leipzig official opens the proceedings, and the room votes to create an umbrella organization, the DFB. The first president is a fascinating choice, Ferdinand Hüppe, a physician and hygienist, and the representative of DFC Prague, yes, a German club from Prague, because in 1900 this is still the German Empire's football ecosystem, spilling across borders in the way culture always does. It's a reminder of how early football maps never match political maps neatly. Now watch how fast the machine begins to run. Within 3 years, Germany has a national championship. In 1903, the first final is staged, and VfB Leipzig win it, beating DFC Prague 7-2 in Altona. And almost immediately, you can feel the gravitational center. Leipzig isn't just a meeting place. It's the football capital of early Germany, a place where clubs, administrators, and ambition converge. And then comes the next institutional leap, the international network. In 1904, football's European associations meet in Paris to found FIFA. Germany isn't physically at the table, but signals intent by telegram and becomes an early member anyway. And by 1908, the German national team plays its first official match, Switzerland 5, Germany 3, in Basel. a loss. But now it's official. Now it counts. Now Germany has a national football identity that can be measured, criticized, improved, and defended. And the early record is rough. Before World War I, Germany lose far more than they win. But even that has a German logic. Loss becomes data becomes reform, and reform becomes depth. Now jump to Stockholm, 1912, Olympic football. Germany don't win medals, but they leave behind one of the most absurd scorelines in the sport's early international history. Germany 16, Russia 0. 16, of which 10 were scored by one player, Gottfried Fuchs. This is the early game's chaotic truth. The gap between teams could still be enormous, and the same system building that produced Germany's early defeats could also produce, in the right matchup, a humiliation in the other direction. Then the war comes. World War I freezes everything, and yet football doesn't fully stop. It's played in garrisons, in camps, in improvised spaces, because the ball is one of the few things that still feels like normalcy. After the war, Germany is isolated. International sport becomes politics by other means, and German organizations are pushed out of the global system. But by the late 1920s, Germany is rehabilitated, readmitted into international football structures, and returned to the broader European sporting conversation. And then comes the World Cup era. Germany skipped the first World Cup in 1930, a European-wide pattern driven by the sheer cost and logistics of getting to Uruguay in the Great Depression era, and by ongoing arguments over amateur ideals. Then Germany arrived properly. In Italy in 1934, Germany won third place at the World Cup, a quick proof that the national machine is working. Then comes 1936, Berlin Olympics, hosted by Nazi Germany. The regime wants football's propaganda value, and Germany collapsed at home, losing 2-0 to Norway in the quarterfinal, a loss so deflating that the story survives as theater. The leadership present, the tension, the anger, and the exit. Then comes Anschluss, which we touched upon a few days ago in episode 84 about Matthias Sindelar. Austria is annexed, and players are pushed into a combined Greater German side. The chemistry is poisoned, the selection is political, the football is wrong, and at the 1938 World Cup, Germany go out in the first round. Meanwhile, inside Germany, the domestic game is reshaped by ideology. There's no national professional league. The old amateur ethos is clung to long after England and others normalized professionalism. Then the Nazis imposed their own structure, Gauliga regional top divisions, and in 1935 the National Cup begins. The regime expands. Clubs from annexed territories are pulled into the system, and the competition map grows. But the football culture becomes less open, less international, less inventive. Then another devastating war, and another ban. After 1945, the old organizations are disbanded by the Allies. FIFA bans Germany in the immediate aftermath. And then the country splits, which means football splits too. What we think of as Germany becomes multiple football identities. The DFB in West Germany, the DFV in East Germany, and even Saarland's brief separate path, which, fittingly, I opened OTD with back in episode 1. It's a fantastic story, you should listen to it. But the DFB is legally refounded in Stuttgart in 1950 by the West German regional associations. And then the comeback begins. West Germany returns to the Olympics in 1952. And in 1954 comes the miracle of Bern. The moment the DFB's post-war identity becomes global. Expect an OTD episode about that sensational World Cup win. Now fast forward, because the next institutional leap is domestic, Bundesliga. In 1962, the DFB approves the creation of a national professional league, and in 1963, the Bundesliga begins. This is the missing piece Germany had resisted for decades, a unified, fully professional top division that concentrates talent, modernizes coaching, and increases competitive pressure weekly. And once that system exists, the national team becomes what we all recognize, a final-making machine. From the mid-1960s into the mid-1990s, 30 years, the record is almost ridiculous. World Cup final in 1966, World Cup semi-final in 1970, European champions 1972, World Cup champions 1974, European final 1976, Euro champions in 80, World Cup finals in 82 and 86, World Cup champion in 90, Euro final in 92, and Euro champions in 96. That isn't a golden generation. That is a system repeatedly producing final teams. And it's not just a national team. German clubs become European powers. Bayern München, Mönchengladbach, Hamburg, and later Dortmund. And German football exports coaches, methods, and a very particular culture, discipline without fear. Now to the modern arc. Germany remain elite, but first places become less frequent. There's still podium. World Cup final in 2002, third place in 06 and 10, Euro final in 08, semi-finals in 12 and 16, and then the peak again, World Cup champions in 2014. But since 2014, it's been a strange contradiction. Germany is still Germany, deep talent, big names, a massive football economy, yet the major titles have stopped. There's a Confederations Cup in 2017, but World Cups bring shock exits. And even when the tournament performance improve, like Euro 2024, where Germany lose in extra time to Spain in a classic quarterfinal, the trophy isn't there. So what do we say about why? Part of it is simply the world is catching up. Spain, France, Italy, Argentina, Brazil, and yes, England's talent base are now consistently elite. The player pool is spread across multiple top leagues and modern development pathways. And part of it is internal. The Bundesliga remains strong, but it's a different economic ecosystem from the Premier League, and elite German talents now move earlier and more frequently. And there's the development question. Germany still produces youth champions, but bridging youth excellence into senior dominance is not automatic. It requires stability, identity, and selection clarity. And in recent cycles, Germany have looked like a heavyweight still searching for its cleanest definition. Which brings us back to why the DFB matters as a story. Because German football is not primarily the story of one genius player. It's the story of institutions learning from pain. So what should we take away from January 28 in 1900? You know it. 3 points. First, German football didn't begin with dominance. It began with embarrassment, resistance, and ridicule, and the decision that the way out wasn't talent hunting, it was system building. Second, the DFB's real superpower has always been organization, championships, leagues, coaching pipelines, national selection. Germany became Germany because football stopped being an event and became infrastructure. And third, institutions don't win forever by reputation. They win by reinvention. And the same machine that delivered 30 years of finals has to modernize again because the world has modernized around it. On this day in 1900, at 10:40 a.m. in Leipzig, German football became an institution. And once football becomes an institution, it becomes something far more dangerous than a team. It becomes a country's long-term competitive habit. That's all for episode 89 of OTD, your daily dose of soccer history by 17 Laws Guy. If you got an idea to the show, email me at otd@17lawsguy.com. And please rate OTD 5 stars, subscribe, and tell all your friends about it. That's the way we can achieve world domination together. Tomorrow, in episode 90, January 29, 2019, the Blockade Derby, and the wider Qatar versus UAE rivalry. See you then.